Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Read Chinese Poetry podcast. I'm Zong-qi, the program host. In this podcast program, my colleagues and I aim to introduce cutting-edge scholarship on Chinese poetry to a broad general audience. We will present 52 episodes covering the major poetic genres developed over China's long history. Each episode features close reading of one or more of the best-known Chinese poems, with an aim to illuminate their literary greatness and cultural significance. For all the discussed poems, Chinese text, English translation, romanization, and brief notes are provided at our website, howtoreadchinesepoetry.com. By following the 52 episodes, listener will gain a bird's-eye view of the thematic, formal, and generic evolution of Chinese poetry from antiquity to the modern era. Instruct and delight is what we wish to accomplish in each talk. Without further ado, let's begin. Hello, everyone. Today, our guest host, Dr. Samei, will present her second episode on short song lyrics, entitled Feeling and Scenes, Early Literati Song Lyrics. Let us welcome Dr. Samei.
In the last episode, I discussed a pair of anonymous poems from the trove of popular materials unearthed at Dunhuang, a crossroads of the Silk Road in Gansu province. This trove of materials is one of our main sources for early song lyric poetry. A second major source is the Literati anthology known as the Among the Flowers collection, or Huajianji. Today, I will discuss two poems from this anthology. The first poem is by Wei Zhuang. Wei Zhuang is most famous for his long narrative poem, Lament of the Lady of Qin, a devastating account of the sacking of Chang'an during the Huangchao Rebellion. That places him right at the end of the Tang Dynasty and into the beginning of the Five Dynasties period that followed. Interestingly, copies of this long poem survived in the same trove of materials at Dunhuang as the anonymous poems we just discussed in the last episode. As you listen to this Shaoling poem by Wei Zhuang, notice the familiar figure of the woman alone. But note that the gender in the first stanza is ambiguous, and while I have assumed a female speaker, the first stanza may also be read as having a male speaker. There will be a reference in the third line to the figure Chang'e. She is the goddess of the moon. Listen now to the poem. Wei Zhuang, to the tune Audience at Golden Gate. Vain to remember him, no way to get news through. Chang'e in the heavens doesn't recognize me. Where shall I seek him to send him a letter? Waking languid from new sleep, can't bear to take up the remains of his letter. She asks herself how she can get in touch with her lover, and on waking languid from sleeping alone at the beginning of stanza 2, she can't bear to take up the well-read remains of an old letter from him. Then, the end of the poem shifts from inner speech to natural imagery, which is made to bear the weight of the speaker's emotion. A courtyard full of fallen blossoms. Spring is lonely, lonely. Heartbreaking, the fragrant grass is green. This shift between inner speech and imagistic presentation is a common feature of the song lyrics' more fluid structure, especially in the hands of literati poets. We don't see the tight parallelism or unity we so often find in Shi poems. Scholars have noted how these kinds of shifts allow the song lyric to capture complex emotional states and processes. I want to look more closely at the last two lines of the poem. A courtyard full of fallen blossoms, spring is lonely, lonely, heartbreaking, the fragrant grasses green. Fallen blossoms signal the passage of spring and thus the passage of time. The irretrievable loss of time seen here in this image is another commonplace of the abandonment convention. But fallen blossoms can also signal the birth and death of hope. Perhaps the speaker's heart had risen when the trees began to bloom in spring, but now here they are, the once beautiful, hopeful blossoms lying all over the ground, perhaps after wind or rain blew them off their branches. The image of the ground covered with blossoms visually captures both the passage of time and the loss of hope. Spring now, for our speaker, is only lonely, lonely. In the last line, heartbreaking, the fragrant grasses green, the Chinese line juxtaposes the idea of heartbreak with the image of fragrant grasses green, setting the two contrasting elements in opposition. Nature is teeming with life while the speaker lies languid and heartbroken. Does she see the grasses and feel her heartbreak more keenly as she contrasts it with this vitality of spring she sees there? Or is there something in the appearance of the grasses that brings on the heartbreak? Is the idea that the bright green spring color reminds her that another season has come and gone without her lovers reappearing? In each of the last two lines, human emotion is placed alongside a natural image. First, loneliness alongside the fallen blossoms, and then here, heartbreak alongside the flourishing green grasses. This juxtaposition is a typical move in Literati song lyric poetry that I will talk about more in a minute. Scholars have noted that the expression of emotion in early Literati song lyrics varies in the degree to which it is made explicit. This poet, Wei Zhuang, is known for being more explicit and direct in the expression of emotion in his poetry. He uses more inner speech and colloquialisms, which here take up most of the poem. Other poets keep the emotion more implicit and subtle. One of these is the poet of our next example, Wen Tingyun, whose song lyrics are also found in the Among the Flowers collection. Wen Tingyun is often contrasted with Wei Zhuang in regard to the explicitness of emotional expression. And as we will see, where Wen Tingyun adopts an abandoned woman persona, his poems tend to maintain a more external perspective on her, focusing on aspects of the woman's appearance and leaving her emotions unstated or implicit. Wen Tingyun lived during the 9th century, near the end of the Tang, but died before the Huangchao rebellion that Wei Zhuang lived through in his prime. He was known for frequenting the entertainment quarters, and his poems often center on the figure of a courtesan entertainer. Listen now to Wen Tingyun's poem to the tune On the Water Clock at Night.
To the tune On the Water Clock at Night. Incense in the jade burner, red wax tears, unbidden, reflect an autumn mood in the painted hall. Blackened brows fade, cloud locks are tousled. The night is long, quilt and pillow cold. Wutong trees and third watch rain are unaware of separation throes. Leaf after leaf, sound by sound, drips on the empty steps till dawn.
In this poem, the difference in line lengths is immediately apparent, even in translation. In Chinese, the first two lines of each half stanza like incense in the jade burner, red wax tears, are each only 3 characters long, while the third is 5 or 6 characters. So the pattern goes 3, 3, 6, 3, 3, 5, and then this repeats in the second stanza. Perhaps one of the first things we notice about this poem, as opposed to the anonymous poems of the previous episode or the poem by Wei Zhuang, is that there are markedly fewer colloquial elements or quotation of inner speech. Images from the scene are presented, beginning with the incense in the burner. Though it is not described explicitly, the implication is that the smoke of the incense is slowly rising from the burner. The dripping of the candle is personified as tears that, unbidden, reflect the mood of the subject in a painted hall. This physical context suggests that this is most likely a high-class person. The word unbidden, pian, is what we call an empty word, or 虚字. It lacks a concrete referent, but it adds to the emotional and subjective quality of the line. These types of words are easily incorporated into the flexible and varied line of the song lyric. Without it, the line would sound like a 5-character line of a 诗 poem. Rather than presenting a universalizable image that may carry implicit emotional weight, these types of words give the line of the song lyric a particular quality and connect the image more explicitly to the emotion of the subject. The next 2 short 3-character lines, blackened brows fade, cloud locks are tousled, suggest a female subject and subtly hint at the presence of a male voyeur whose gaze has moved past the objects in the environment, like the incense burner and the candle, to the woman herself. The line, night is long, quilt and pillow cold, places her in the tradition of the abandoned woman. The long night suggests a sleepless subject. The cold quilt and pillow emphasize her lonely state. The second stanza begins by taking us out of doors to present another image, this time an image of a natural scene centering on the wutong trees, on which the dripping rain, unaware of separation throes, seems oblivious to the woman's grief. And here our suspicion is confirmed that the female subject is suffering from the separation from her lover. Listen to the lines again. Wutong trees and third watch rain are unaware of separation throes. This reference to separation throes, together with the one word unbidden in the first stanza, are the closest we get to explicit emotional expression in this poem. In the final lines, we learn that the tree is perceived primarily through the sound of the rain on its leaves in the dark night. Hear the lines again. Leaf after leaf, sound by sound, drips on the empty steps till dawn. The rain here seems to conspire with the broad leaves of the tree to compound her feelings. It is almost as if the rain is torturing the sleepless, lonely woman. While for male speakers in the shi or lyric poem, nature is often a source of consolation. For this and many female speakers in song lyrics, nature is unfeeling or fails to console. In keeping with its literati authorship, this poem also shows evidence of careful crafting. First, in each pair of the sets of 3-character lines, we can discern a rough parallelism between jade burner incense and red wax tears, blackened brows fade and cloud locks tousled in stanza 1, and in the second stanza again, wutong trees and third watch rain are placed in parallel, and then also leaf after leaf parallels sound by sound. During this period, literati poets may have still been writing their song lyrics for performance by entertainers, but they brought to their lyrics a close attention to poetic craft that later generations continue to prize. I want to go back to the first 2 lines of the poem again to say a little more about the brief 3-character line, red wax tears. In the poem as a whole, objects in the environment, whether natural or man-made, connect to and reflect the woman's subjective emotional state. But here in this famous line, we have the candle actually appearing to weep on her behalf. At the same time, the dripping of the candle, suggested by its tears, emphasizes the passage of time during the long sleepless night. Its flame, like the smoke of the incense burner, is not explicitly described, but comes to life in our imagination, where the wisps of incense and flickerings of candlelight create a sensuous impression of the atmosphere in the hall, now hiding and now revealing details of the painted decorations of the room and mirroring the autumn mood of the figure who's about to be introduced, lying on her pillow in the coming lines. The infusion of emotion in the candle is an example of a device in Chinese poetry called the fusion of emotion and scene, 情景交融, in which physical objects are imbued with human emotion, much like John Ruskin's notion of the pathetic fallacy. Many of the very best poems across the centuries employ this fusion of feeling and scene in ways that may be extremely subtle and difficult to define, but that leave a memorable and ineffable impression on the mind of the reader. In the next episode, we'll be looking at a couple of later literati examples of song lyric poems where poetic craft and the imbuing of scene with emotion will show up again. Thanks for joining me. Until next time.
Let us thank Dr. Samei for such a stimulating talk. We look forward to hearing her 3rd episode on short song lyrics next Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Let's relax and listen to a reading of the poems in Mandarin.
夜津门，空相忆，无计得传消息。天上嫦娥人不识，寄书何处觅？新睡觉来无力，不忍把引书寄。满院落花春寂寂，断肠芳草碧。
更漏子，玉炉香，红蜡泪。偏照画堂秋思，梅翠薄，鬓云残。夜长清枕寒。梧桐树，3更雨，不到离情正苦。一夜夜，一声声，空阶低到明。